You look at the First Amendment, this is an administration that consistently has refused to respect and has violated religious liberty, especially the religious liberty of the brave men and women fighting in our military. You look at the Second Amendment. Vice President Joe Biden.
Oh, please.
Yeah, he is.
You know the nice thing? You don't need a punchline.
Not with him.
Oh.
You just say his name. I promise. Try it. Go to a cocktail party. Be sitting there, just look at someone and say, Vice President Joe Biden. They will crack up laughing. But Vice President Joe Biden said, if someone attacks your house, just go outside with a double-barreled shotgun, fire both barrels in the air. Now that is very, very good advice. If it so happens you're being attacked by a flock of geese. But you know what? This is the most anti-Second Amendment administration and president we've ever seen. You look at the Fourth and Fifth Amendments, the rights of privacy of every American. How many of y'all have your cell phones? I'm going to ask each of you, please, leave your cell phones on. I want to make sure President Obama hears every word we have to say.
You got it. Patriotic defenders of the Constitution.
But you know, every bit as worrisome as the assault on the Bill of Rights is the consistent pattern of lawlessness from this president and this administration. The contempt for rule of law. You know, this administration began early on by the president decreeing a moratorium on offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. Had no legal authority to do so. A federal court struck it down, said this is contrary to law. What did they do? He reimposed it right after that, ignored the federal court. On Monday, 2 days from now, U.S. Supreme Court is going to be hearing a case challenging the appointments the president made to the National Labor Relations Board. Now, the Constitution says the president can make appointments, the Senate confirms them. It also has an exception. If the Senate's in recess, the president can get around that confirmation. Well, President Obama did something that 43 presidents before him had never done. He said, the Senate's not in recess, but I say they are. I'm appointing them. No confirmation.
Wow.
3 federal courts of appeals have struck down the president's appointments as unconstitutional. And this administration is just ignoring the courts. It is openly flouting and defying the courts. You know, you look at what this administration has said in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. In the last 2 years, 9 separate times, this administration has argued for overbroad federal authority. 9 separate times it's been rejected unanimously. The Obama administration argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court that the government should be able to put a GPS tracker on any American's car with no warrant, no probable cause, no articulable suspicion. You know, there is that Fourth Amendment thing. But according to this administration, doesn't have anything to say about putting GPS on cars. If this administration had its way, they could be out in the parking lot right now putting GPSs on all of our cars. Although in Texas, we have a check against that called a gun rack. U.S. Supreme Court unanimously rejected that proposition, said, of course, Americans have a right to be free from the government monitoring everywhere they go. This administration also, in another case called Hosanna Tabor, made an argument, you know, we're standing in a church today. This administration went in front of the U.S. Supreme Court and said the First Amendment has nothing to say about whether a church has the authority to hire their own pastors, hire their own teachers. There's no First Amendment protection whatsoever. Justice Elena Kagan, who was appointed by Barack Obama, famed right-wing kook Elena Kagan, said from the bench in the U.S. Supreme Court when the Department of Justice attorney argued the First Amendment doesn't protect religious liberty of churches to hire their own pastors and teachers, she said, "I find what you're saying amazing." That's his own judicial appointee saying it is amazing that the U.S. Department of Justice would go into court and say the First Amendment doesn't protect our most fundamental religious rights. This ought to worry every American. And you know, if you look across the terrain of lawlessness, there is no greater embodiment of lawlessness than this administration's enforcement or non-enforcement of Obamacare. You know, the president loves to say Obamacare is the law of the land. Then why won't he follow it? Mm-hmm. You know, the law of the land, Obamacare, says in its text that the employer mandate will kick in for big business on January 1st, 2014. The president said, no, it won't. Now, I don't know how many of y'all remember your junior high civics class.